And yet, when Tuskegee is exposed, do you have a recollection of what your thoughts are as you were first handed the stack of papers and going back to the 1930s and
Well, a lot of good research was being done at the time, and I thought, this has been going on for more than 30 years. It must be good research. So I started with the expectation of reading research that could not only be defended but praised. But I found nothing defensible about it. And so I had to write that short memo saying it's indefensible, and called to Richardson's office. He said, then write me testimony and tell me what we should do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so I wrote 8 pages of testimony for him, calling for increased effort to exercise surveillance over the research that was funded by NIH and indirectly by all the research being conducted at that time almost exclusively by our universities. Mm-hmm. The drug firms were contracting out to the universities, so they did very little research of their own. The university was the center of research, and we began then to try to find ways to regulate research conducted within the university system of the U.S.
Did Tuskegee represent for the government, or particularly for Senator Kennedy and Rogers, was that the tipping point that gave them the last bit of momentum they needed to?
Yes, I think so.
Generate reforms?
As I indicated, they had conducted 4 years of hearings, so the public had already been alerted to the fact that there were lots of abuses. But the Tuskegee study, because it involved the abuse of 400 black males and their families, of course, and coming right at the end of the civil rights movement, when we had just passed laws in which we affirmed the dignity of all Americans, including African-American men, and then to see this scandal, which had been brewing for more than 30 years, it created an uproar. And of course, both Rogers and Kennedy, Rogers in the House, Kennedy in the Senate, and some other congressmen and senators immediately conducted hearings. And by the way, an aside, the lawyer who defended the lady who refused to get off the bus in Birmingham also defended the persons who were in the Tuskegee study. So he and I became fast friends. And
he ended up speaking at Primer several years ago.
Yes, he did, he was a fine man, but he also defended Rosa Parks.
That's right.
And he considered that his greatest achievement. I look on Tuskegee as equally great, but anyway, he was a fine man, upstanding, and he was on television often and gained respect of the American people, who were open at the end of the civil rights debate to hearing from black lawyers who were well-educated, very smart, and able to describe the abuses that had been inflicted on their people. So it was a very rich time in to be in the government, to be working in the government. I often then was, because I had attended all those hearings, I was often called upon to write speeches for Senator Kennedy, for Congressman Rogers, and sometimes for other congressmen. So it gave me a chance to bring in much of my academic background to talk about the development of the civil rights movement, and the importance of correcting abuses in the research system that were abusive of minorities. We also had cases involving Hispanics. We had cases involving Asians. And so if they were not as sensational, they were simply supportive of the fact that Tuskegee was not an isolated incident. There were lots more. And that moved the Congress to pass Public Law 93-348.